Welcome back to Old Charles. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of American coins, and the spotlight is on the United States half-dollar from 1974. Whether you're a coin collector, a history lover, or just someone curious about the change in your pocket, this episode is going to give you everything you need to know about this iconic coin, its history, condition, and value. So, let's get started. The United States half-dollar has a rich history, and the 1974 edition is no exception. First, let's talk about the series itself. The coin you see is part of the Kennedy half-dollar series, first introduced in 1964, shortly after the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. It quickly became a national symbol of respect and remembrance for America's beloved president. The earlier coins, minted in 1964, were made of 90% silver. From 1965 to 1970, the composition shifted to a 40% silver-clad version. But by 1971 onwards, including the 1974 half-dollar, the U.S. Mint removed silver entirely from regular circulation coins. Instead, these coins were struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition. The obverse of the coin features the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts, while the reverse shows the presidential seal with an eagle holding arrows and an olive branch, designed by Frank Gasparo in 1974. The half-dollar was struck at three main mints. These coins circulated widely during the 1970s, although by that time, the half-dollar was already becoming less common in daily use, since people preferred quarters and smaller denominations for convenience. Now, let's get into what everyone wants to know, the value of the 1974 half-dollar. Since this coin is made of copper-nickel clad and not silver, most circulated examples are only worth face value, 50 cents. However, collectors look for certain features, mint marks, and conditions that can make these coins more valuable. A 1974 Kennedy half-dollar from Philadelphia or Denver **** in circulated condition is usually just worth face value. In uncirculated condition, these coins can be worth around $2 to $5. The 1974 Denver Mint has an interesting variety known as the double die obverse, DDO, where you can see doubling in the inscriptions, especially on the word, "In God We Trust." This era variety can fetch anywhere from $20 to several $100, depending on condition. The 1974 proof coins from San Francisco are more collectible. Proof coins, especially those with deep cameo contrasts, can sell from $5 to $15 or more, depending on their grade. So while most 1974 half-dollars are common, there are special cases where their value goes much higher than face value. When it comes to coins, condition is everything. Collectors grade coins based on details like luster, strike, and wear. A heavily circulated 1974 half-dollar will have worn-down details on Kennedy's hair and face, and flattening on the eagle on the reverse. In about uncirculated AU condition, you'll see slight wear only on the highest points of the design. In mint state MS condition, the coin will have no wear at all, but grading goes further into numbers like MS60 to MS70, depending on how sharp and flawless the coin is. For proof coins from San Francisco, collectors also look for cameo and deep cameo designations, which mean the contrast between the frosted design and the shiny background is strong. Those designations add even more value. So, the 1974 United States half-dollar is not a silver coin, but it still carries a lot of history and collector interest. From its connection to President Kennedy to the potential of rare varieties like the 1974 double die, this coin is definitely worth checking out in your collection. If you've got a half-dollar from 1974 sitting in a jar, take a closer look. You might just have a valuable error or proof coin hiding there. We're going. America's most recognized coins, the United States half-dollar from 1974. At first glance, it may seem like an ordinary coin, but behind it lies a story filled with history, symbolism, and a deep connection to the American people. In this video, we'll go deep into its history, condition, and value. Let's get started. The story of the 1974 United States half-dollar is closely tied to one of the most defining moments in American history, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Back in the early 1960s, the half-dollar was already an important denomination in circulation. At that time, the Franklin half-dollar, featuring Benjamin Franklin on the obverse and the Liberty Bell on the reverse, had been minted from 1948 until 1963. However, everything changed on November 22, 1963, when President Kennedy was tragically assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The nation was in shock, and people looked for a way to honor and memorialize their fallen leader. Almost immediately, the idea of featuring Kennedy on a coin came into discussion. The half-dollar was chosen because it was large enough to carry a detailed portrait and because it would symbolize Kennedy's importance as both a wartime hero and a president. The U.S. Mint moved quickly. Chief engraver Gilroy Roberts designed the obverse portrait of Kennedy, based on a bust he had previously created for the President's Medal. Meanwhile, Frank Gasparo, another mint engraver, designed the reverse with the presidential seal, an eagle holding arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by stars. Within just a few months, the first Kennedy half-dollars were struck in 1964. The release of the coin was historic. People lined up at banks to get them, and the coins quickly disappeared from circulation, not only because of the silver content but also because Americans wanted to keep them as keepsakes in memory of Kennedy. From 1964 to 1970, the half-dollar still contained silver. The very first year, 1964, it was struck in 90% silver. From 1965 onward, the coin shifted to a 40% silver-clad version, as the U.S. Mint reduced silver usage due to rising costs and the public hoarding coins. By the early 1970s, the U.S. government decided to completely eliminate silver from circulating coins. Starting in 1971, the Kennedy half-dollar, along with other circulating denominations, switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition, the same metal mixture used in the 1974 half-dollar. This change marked the beginning of the modern era for U.S. coins. Now, let's talk about the specific year, 1974. This was an interesting period in U.S. history. Richard Nixon was president, but the country was facing economic difficulties, rising inflation, and the ongoing Watergate scandal. At the same time, coins like the half-dollar were becoming less popular in everyday transactions. By 1974, many Americans preferred using quarters, and half-dollars were often seen more in casinos, banks, and collectors' albums rather than in pockets or cash registers. The 1974 Kennedy half-dollar was struck at 3 different mints. These coins were made for general circulation and are the most common. Also widely circulated, but Denver coins are known for some varieties, including the famous 1974 D double die obverse, which shows clear doubling in the inscriptions. These coins were struck as proof specifically for collectors. The San Francisco Mint had become the hub for producing proof sets in the 1970s. An important point to note is that while these coins were made for circulation, by the mid-1970s, many Americans had developed the habit of saving Kennedy half-dollars. This means that a good number of 1974 coins, especially proofs, survived in excellent condition. Even though the 1974 half-dollar does not contain silver, it remains a significant coin for collectors because it belongs to the early copper-nickel-clad era of the Kennedy series. It represents a time when U.S. coinage was undergoing, both in terms of design legacy and metal composition. To summarize the history, it began with a national tragedy in 1963. The coin became a memorial to President Kennedy starting in 1964. By 1974, it had transformed from a silver-based collectible to a copper-nickel circulating coin. Despite its lower metal value, it continued to hold symbolic value as one of the most beloved and recognizable coins in American coinage. The 1974 half-dollar is more than just a piece of money. It's a reminder of the turbulent yet meaningful times of the 1970s, and a continuation of the nation's tribute to John F. Kennedy. When it comes to coin collecting, one of the most important factors that determines the value of any coin, including the 1974 United States half-dollar, is its condition. Collectors and grading companies like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company, use a standardized grading scale known as the Sheldon scale, which ranges from poor, P1, all the way up to perfect mint state, MS 70, Let's break this down for the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar. Most 1974 half-dollars that you'll find today are in circulated condition. That means they were used in everyday transactions during the 1970s, 1980s, and even later. These coins often show obvious signs of wear. Kennedy's hair will appear flat, the cheek and jawline may have lost detail, and the eagle on the reverse may look worn down. In circulated grades like good, G4, very good, VG8, or fine, F12, the coin still has its basic details visible, but much of the sharpness is gone. In these grades, the coin is usually only worth face value, 50 cents if the coin saw very little circulation. It may grade as about uncirculated, -50 Australian dollars to -58 Australian dollars. These coins show slight wear only on the highest points of Kennedy's portrait, such as his hair above the ear and the cheekbone. The reverse will still have strong details, but with minor signs of handling. AU coins. For slightly higher than face value, but not a huge premium unless they're the 1974 D double die variety. The real jump in value happens with coins in mint state, MS-60 to MS-70. These coins have never been used in circulation and show no wear at all. Collectors look for original mint luster, that shiny, cartwheel effect you see when you tilt the coin under light. However, even mint state coins can have imperfections like bag marks, scratches, or weak strikes. That's why grading companies assign numbers. Proof versions of the 1974 half-dollar were struck at the San Francisco Mint. These coins weren't meant for circulation but were sold to collectors in proof sets. Proof coins are made with specially polished dies and planchets, giving them a mirror-like finish. Collectors also look for special designations, very strong frost and deep mirror fields, the most desirable proof quality. Proof 1974 S coins in PR 65, PR 67, or higher grades can sell for much more than standard circulation strikes. Condition matters even more with error varieties. The 1974 D double die obverse can be worth $50 to several $100, but only if it's in higher grades like AU or mint state. In low circulated grades, it's still collectible but not as valuable. Condition drastically increases value, especially for double dies. For collectors, condition is often the deciding factor between a coin worth 50 cents and a coin worth hundreds of dollars. That's why grading and preservation are so important in the hobby of numismatics.